Queen Mary's secret message to Denmark. What cameras caught at the palace? Welcome to BNews. What if a queen could speak directly to her nation without uttering a single word? What if, in a single carefully orchestrated moment, she could communicate hope, defiance, solidarity, and strength through nothing more than what she chose to wear, where she chose to stand, and how she chose to present herself to the world? On December 4, 2024, something extraordinary happened at Amalienborg Palace that has royal watchers, symbolism experts, and ordinary Danes buzzing with speculation and analysis. Queen Mary appeared at what was announced as a routine official engagement, but what the cameras captured was anything but routine. Every single detail of her appearance, from the specific jewelry she wore to the exact shade of her outfit, from her positioning in the palace rooms to the subtle gestures she made, appears to have been meticulously chosen to send a message. And once you understand the symbolism, once you decode what Mary was communicating through this visual language that royals have used for centuries, the message is impossible to ignore and potentially explosive in its implications. Some experts believe Queen Mary was sending a message of reassurance to Danes worried about the monarchy's future. Others interpret her choices as a subtle declaration of independence or even defiance. Still others see something more personal, a message about her own journey, her own strength, her own understanding of what it means to be Queen of Denmark in this turbulent moment. What everyone agrees on is that this was no accident, no random selection of wardrobe and accessories. This was deliberate, purposeful communication from a queen who has learned how to speak volumes without saying a word. The event itself was announced as a reception for representatives from Danish charitable organizations that Queen Mary has patronized throughout her years as Crown Princess and now as Queen. On the surface, it seemed like standard royal fare, the kind of engagement that fills royal calendars year after year, important for the organizations receiving royal attention but not typically newsworthy beyond brief mentions in Danish media. The palace released the usual advance notice. Photographers and journalists were given access for the customary photo opportunity at the beginning of the event, and everything appeared to be proceeding according to the predictable rhythms of royal duty. But the moment Queen Mary entered the room where the reception was being held, seasoned royal watchers immediately recognized that something was different. There was an intentionality to every aspect of her presentation, a sense that she was making deliberate choices rather than simply following the routine advice of her stylists and advisors. And as the details of her appearance have been analyzed and the symbolism decoded, what emerges is a message so carefully constructed and potentially significant that it has dominated Danish media coverage and sparked intense speculation about what Queen Mary is really trying to communicate. But before we decode every element of Queen Mary's secret message and explore what it might mean for Denmark's future, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and have notifications turned on, because understanding the hidden language of royal symbolism reveals stories that official statements never tell. And if you're already fascinated by the idea that Queen Mary might be communicating something profound through carefully chosen symbols, and we know you are, hit that like button right now to show your support for journalism that looks beyond the surface to understand what's really happening. Now, let's examine exactly what cameras caught at the palace and decode the secret message Queen Mary may be sending to Denmark and the world. The first element that caught the attention of royal fashion experts and symbolism analysts was Queen Mary's choice of outfit color, a deep, rich ruby red that immediately stood out in the photographs. In royal fashion, color choices are never random, particularly for someone as sophisticated and aware as Queen Mary. Red has multiple layers of symbolic meaning in Danish context and in royal tradition more broadly. It's the color of the Danish flag, the Dannebrog, making it an inherently patriotic choice that signals connection to national identity. But red also traditionally symbolizes strength, courage, passion, and determination, qualities that take on special significance given the challenges and uncertainties the Danish monarchy has faced throughout 2024. Some fashion historians have noted that Mary has worn red at previous moments of transition or challenge, suggesting this is her power color, the shade she chooses when she needs to project confidence and strength. The specific shade of ruby red she selected, deep and rich rather than bright or orange toned, has been compared to the color of crown jewels, creating a subtle visual connection between her outfit and the symbols of royal authority and continuity. But it was Queen Mary's jewelry choices that have generated the most intense analysis and speculation, because this is where the message becomes impossible to ignore. She wore 3 specific pieces, each loaded with historical significance and symbolic meaning. First, the most immediately noticeable piece, the Crown Princess Mary tiara, which she received as a gift on her wedding day in 2004 and which she wore throughout her years as Crown Princess but has rarely worn since becoming Queen. The decision to wear this specific tiara rather than one of the other magnificent pieces available to her from the Danish crown jewels has been interpreted as deeply significant. Some analysts suggest it's a message about continuity, Mary connecting her current role as queen to her journey from Australian commoner to Danish royalty, reminding Danes of the fairy tale narrative that has made her so beloved. Others interpret it more personally, as Mary reclaiming her own identity and story at a moment when she might be feeling constrained or defined entirely by her role as King Frederik's consort. Still others see it as a message of humility, choosing her tiara rather than more historically significant crown jewels, suggesting that she doesn't need the weight of centuries to establish her authority and legitimacy. The second jewelry piece that has sparked intense analysis is a brooch that Mary wore pinned prominently on her ruby red jacket, the Australian wattle brooch, a piece featuring gold wattle blossoms, Australia's national flower, that was given to her by the Australian government when she became crown princess. Mary has worn this brooch only a handful of times over the past 2 decades, typically on occasions with specific Australian connections. So why wear it now, at a reception for Danish charitable organizations with no obvious Australian connection? The symbolic interpretations are fascinating and varied. Some experts believe Mary is sending a message about her roots, asserting that 20 years in Denmark hasn't erased her Australian identity, that she remains fundamentally the woman she was before becoming royalty. This could be interpreted as empowering, a declaration that she hasn't been subsumed by the role, that Mary Donaldson still exists within Queen Mary. Others see it as a message about choice and courage, reminding Danes that she chose to leave everything familiar and build a life in Denmark, that her presence as their queen represents an active decision renewed every day rather than an accident of birth. Still others interpret the Australian symbol as a message about perspective and distance, perhaps Mary signaling that she maintains enough outsider perspective to see Denmark and its monarchy clearly, not blinded by tradition or too embedded in the system to recognize when change is needed. The third jewelry element has perhaps generated the most speculation and concern among those trying to decode Mary's message. She chose not to wear her wedding ring. Royal watchers noted immediately that Mary's left hand was conspicuously bare of the wedding band that she has worn constantly for 20 years, through countless public appearances and private moments captured by cameras. Wedding rings carry obvious symbolism, and their presence or absence is immediately noticed and interpreted. The absence of Mary's wedding ring has triggered an explosion of speculation. Some immediately jump to relationship concerns, wondering if this signals trouble between Mary and Frederik, perhaps related to the enormous pressures they've faced or to specific incidents or decisions. However, more thoughtful analysts have proposed alternative interpretations. Some suggest that Mary removing her wedding ring is a message about institutional rather than personal relationships, perhaps signaling that her commitment is to Denmark and to her role rather than being defined primarily through her marriage to Frederik. Others have noted that in various cultural and spiritual traditions, removing a ring can symbolize a transition or transformation, a shedding of one identity to embrace another. Could Mary be signaling her evolution from Frederik's wife to Denmark's queen in her own right, a sovereign rather than simply a consort? Still others have proposed that the absent wedding ring is a message about vulnerability and authenticity, Mary showing that she doesn't need the symbols of conventional security, that she stands before Denmark as herself rather than hiding behind the traditional markers of her various roles. Beyond the jewelry, royal watchers have analyzed every other aspect of Mary's appearance and behavior during this event for additional clues to her message. Her hair was styled in a way that several analysts have described as more Mary Donaldson than Queen Mary, looser, less formally structured than her typical royal styling, perhaps another signal of authenticity or a return to fundamental identity. Her makeup was notably understated, almost minimal by royal event standards, which some interpret as another message about authenticity and not hiding behind artifice. Her choice of shoes, elegant but practical, comfortable rather than the towering heels often associated with fashion-forward royal appearances, has been read as a message about being grounded, about choosing substance over style, about preparation for action rather than simply being decorative. The physical positioning and body language that cameras caught during the event have also been subjected to intense analysis. Queen Mary chose to sit among the charitable organization representatives rather than on a raised platform or throne that had been provided for her, a deliberate rejection of physical elevation and separation that suggests a message about equality and connection. Throughout the event, she maintained direct eye contact with everyone she spoke to, often reaching out to touch arms or hands in a way that conveys genuine connection and engagement rather than merely performing royal duty. Several times during the event, Cameras caught Mary gazing directly into the lens with an expression that has been variously described as determined, knowing, challenging, or inviting, as if she was aware of exactly what message she was sending and wanted to ensure it was received and understood. Perhaps most intriguingly, there's one moment captured on video that has been replayed and analyzed thousands of times across Danish social media. During a conversation with representatives from a women's shelter organization that Mary has supported for years, she made a gesture, her hand moving to her heart and then extending outward toward the women she was speaking with, that body language experts have identified as deeply significant. This gesture, which appears natural and spontaneous rather than calculated, is used across cultures to signify, "My heart is with you," or "I feel your pain, share your struggle." But in this specific context, with all the other symbolic elements of Mary's appearance and behavior, some analysts believe this gesture was the key to understanding her entire message. Was Mary signaling solidarity with Danish women navigating difficult circumstances? Was she communicating her own sense of vulnerability or struggle? Was she declaring her emotional allegiance to causes and people rather than to institutions and traditions? The gesture lasted perhaps 2 seconds, but its placement within the broader symbolic language of the event has made it a focal point of interpretation and speculation. The immediate reaction within Denmark to the recognition that Queen Mary might be sending a coded message has been intense and divided. On social media, the hashtag Queen Mary's message has been trending for days, with Danes offering their own interpretations of what she was communicating. Some see it as reassurance, Mary telling Danes that she and Frederik are strong, that the monarchy will endure, that they should have faith in their royal family's ability to navigate current challenges. Others interpret it as a call to action, Mary urging Danes to engage with the questions facing their nation, to not be passive observers but active participants in determining their future. Still others read it as something more personal and even troubling, a queen expressing her own doubts, struggles, or recognition that profound change is coming whether anyone is ready for it or not. What's striking is how seriously Danes are taking this analysis, how much effort is being devoted to understanding what Mary might be communicating beyond words, reflecting the deep emotional investment many Danes have in their queen and their concern about understanding what's really happening within their royal family. Royal household sources, speaking anonymously to Danish media, have provided conflicting information about whether Mary's appearance and choices were as calculated as analysts believe. Some sources insist that Mary simply wore jewelry and clothes she liked, that there was no deeper message or symbolic intent, that people are reading far too much into routine choices. However, other sources have suggested that Mary has indeed become increasingly sophisticated about using fashion, jewelry, and appearance as a form of communication, that she understands the visual language of royalty and uses it deliberately, and that nothing about her appearance at this event was accidental or unconsidered. One source described Mary as speaking in a language that most people don't consciously understand but that they feel and respond to on some level, suggesting that whether or not every element was consciously planned as messaging, Mary's choices reflected her internal state and her understanding of the moment in ways that communicated authentically even if not always consciously. International royal experts have weighed in on the incident, with many expressing admiration for the sophistication of what they believe was Mary's symbolic communication. Comparisons have been drawn to other instances of royals using fashion and symbolism to send messages: Princess Diana's famous revenge dress, Meghan Markle's careful choices of designers and colors with specific cultural or political meanings, even Queen Elizabeth II's brooch selections that royal watchers learned to decode as diplomatic messaging. What makes Mary's potential message particularly sophisticated, according to these experts, is its layers of meaning, the way different elements can be interpreted individually but also work together to create a more complex message, the way the symbolism speaks to multiple audiences simultaneously: Danes, the royal family, international observers, and the way it communicates while maintaining plausible deniability. If confronted, Mary could simply say she wore jewelry she likes and there was no deeper meaning, making it impossible to accuse her of improper or inappropriate messaging. The psychological dimension of this incident, both what Mary might be experiencing and how Danes are responding, is fascinating and revealing. If Mary is indeed sending messages through symbolic communication rather than direct statements, it suggests a level of constraint or frustration with official channels. Does she feel unable to speak freely about her concerns, her hopes, her understanding of the situation? Is she finding creative ways to communicate authentically while navigating the limitations placed on royal speech and behavior? The intensity with which Danes are analyzing her choices and seeking hidden meanings suggests a hunger for authentic communication from their royal family, a sense that official statements and carefully managed public relations don't provide the truth or insight they crave. The relationship between Mary and the Danish public in this moment resembles that between any public figure and their audience when trust in official communication has eroded. People start looking for truth in the spaces between words, in the choices that seem to reveal more than carefully crafted statements ever could. There's also the question of what this means for Mary's relationship with King Frederik and with the royal institution more broadly. If Mary is indeed sending independent messages, asserting her own voice and perspective distinct from official royal positions, does this represent growing distance or disagreement within the royal family? Or is it actually evidence of a healthy partnership where Mary feels empowered to express her own views and identity rather than being subsumed by her role as consort? Some analysts have suggested that Frederik would likely support Mary's self-expression and authentic communication, that his own instincts toward breaking with rigid tradition would make him appreciative rather than threatened by Mary asserting her own voice. Others wonder if Mary's symbolic messaging represents a kind of insurance or preparation, establishing her own identity and relationship with the Danish people independent of Frederik's decisions, so that if the monarchy faces further crisis or transformation, she has her own foundation of public support and credibility. The timing of this apparent message from Queen Mary is significant given everything happening in and around the Danish monarchy in late 2024. With ongoing questions about the institution's future, with family tensions still unresolved, with generational shifts in how Danes view royal tradition and privilege, Mary's choices at this moment carry extra weight and significance. Some believe she is trying to position herself and the monarchy for whatever comes next, using symbolic language to communicate values, commitments, and understanding that will serve well regardless of what specific forms or changes the institution undergoes. Others think Mary might be preparing Danes for something, a coming announcement, a significant change, a new direction, by beginning to communicate through these more subtle channels before any official statement is made. Looking at the specific charitable organizations represented at this event provides another layer of potential meaning. These weren't random charities but organizations focused on women's welfare, children's rights, domestic violence prevention, and refugee support, causes that Mary has championed throughout her time as crown princess and queen. The decision to send whatever message she was sending at an event focused on these particular causes could itself be significant. Is Mary aligning herself and her message specifically with the most vulnerable members of Danish society? Is she signaling that her priorities and concerns lie with real human welfare rather than with maintaining institutional traditions? Several of the organizational representatives present have spoken to media,